March 27, 1944, 2:11 a.m. Chengdu Airfield, Western China. The cold bites first. Thin, sharp, unforgiving. Floodlights cut through the darkness, spilling pale white onto aluminum skin. The bomber sits there like something unfinished, too big, too quiet, too expensive to be trusted. Frost clings to the wings of the B-29 Superfortress as ground crews move beneath it, boots crunching on frozen gravel. You can hear engines coughing to life across the field, one by one. Slow, reluctant. Colonel Leonard Harmon pulls his flight jacket tighter as he climbs the ladder toward the cockpit. 29 years old, already gray at the temples. He pauses for half a second before stepping inside, his gloved hand resting on the fuselage. The metal vibrates faintly, like the aircraft is nervous too. They call this plane a waste of time. Not the enemy, not Japan. America did. Back in Washington, officers whispered that it was a fantasy bomber, too complex, too fragile, too expensive. Generals complained about engine fires. Senators complained about costs. Mechanics cursed its wiring, its pressurization, its temper. Too much airplane, one Army Air Force's memo had said. Too many problems for wartime. And tonight. Every one of those doubts hangs in the air, heavier than the fuel vapor drifting across the runway. The crew climbs in, 11 men. Pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, navigator, engineer, gunners. Faces pale under red cockpit lights. No one jokes. No one prays out loud. They've trained for months for this moment, flying over mountains that tear oxygen from your lungs, over weather that freezes sweat before it dries. Half the men here have already watched B-29s turn back smoking, or not return at all. You can almost feel the weight of the mission pressing down as the engines finally roar to full life. Right R-3350s, powerful, unreliable, beautiful. Deadly flames lick briefly from an exhaust stack before disappearing into the night. A ground crewman looks up instinctively, heart jumping. Fire was the B-29's curse. It had killed crews before the enemy ever saw them. The tower clears them for takeoff. The bomber begins to roll. Slow at first, painfully slow. The runway lights blur past as Harmon pushes the throttles forward. The aircraft groans under its own weight fuel. Bombs, men, expectation. The nose refuses to lift. Seconds stretch. The end of the runway rushes closer. For a moment, you wonder if the critics were right. Then the Superfortress rises, barely. Its wheels leave the earth as if the ground itself is reluctant to let it go. The bomber climbs into the darkness, joining a stream of silver giants heading east, toward Japan. This was supposed to be the war-winning machine. Instead, it had become a symbol of frustration. The B-29 had been born in ambition, designed to fly higher than flak, farther than fighters, faster than interception, pressurized cabins, remote-controlled gun turrets. A bomb load that dwarfed anything before it. On paper, it was unstoppable. In reality, it was a nightmare. Engines overheated. Turbos failed. Crews bailed out over China and disappeared into Japanese patrol zones. Maintenance hours stacked into the hundreds for every hour flown. General Hop Arnold himself had staked his reputation on this aircraft, and now watched reports pile up detailing aborted missions and burning wreckage. The enemy barely needed to fight it, and yet, despite everything, the missions continued. Because the alternative was unthinkable. From bases carved into the Chinese countryside. The B-29s of Operation Matterhorn struggled toward Japan, burning precious fuel just to reach altitude. Every bomb dropped came at a terrifying logistical cost. Fuel flown over the Himalayas, spare parts scavenged from grounded aircraft, crews pushed to exhaustion. Japanese radar stations picked them up easily. Fighters climbed to meet them. Flak bursts blossomed in the thin air like black flowers, but the damage they did was minimal. Factories repaired, cities endured. Tokyo slept, mostly unafraid. In Japan, newspapers mocked the bomber's effectiveness. In the United States, doubts hardened into something more dangerous. Was this plane worth it? Inside the Pentagon, voices grew louder. Resources could be diverted, production slowed. Some wondered if the Superfortress would be remembered as a technological dead end, a brilliant idea that arrived before its time. Even among the crews, faith wavered. You could see it in their eyes after missions, in the way pilots stared at maintenance reports, in the way gunners checked their oxygen masks twice, knowing they might need to bail out over enemy territory if another engine caught fire. The B-29 wasn't failing because it lacked power. It was failing because no one had yet figured out how to use it. High-altitude bombing over Japan sounded good in theory. In reality, jet streams tore formations apart. Bombs drifted hundreds of yards off target. Precision dissolved in wind and cloud. Every mission ended the same way. Long flight, high cost, little effect. And somewhere, deep in the mind of American leadership, a question formed that no one wanted to say out loud. What if this is as good as it gets? What if the most expensive bomber ever built cannot end the war? That question would soon find its answer, not at 30,000 feet, not in daylight, but in fire. And when that answer came, it would change Japan forever. January 20th, 1945, Guam. 3:40 a.m. rain hammers the tin roof of the briefing hut like impatient fingers. Inside, the air smells of damp uniforms, stale coffee, and exhaustion that sleep can no longer cure. Rows of bomber crews sit on wooden benches, boots muddy, eyes hollow. They've heard rumors all night. Something is changing. At the front of the room stands Major General Curtis Emerson LeMay. Stocky, square-jawed, no notes in his hands. A cigar clenched between his teeth, unlit for once. He studies the room like a man counting pieces on a chessboard. These men know his reputation. LeMay doesn't believe in luck, doesn't believe in excuses, and he does not believe in doing things the way they've always been done. "You're not flying high tonight," he says flatly. A ripple moves through the room. Confusion, surprise. Someone shifts on the bench. No formation bombing, no daylight, no fancy ideas about precision. He pauses, letting it sink in. You're going in low, real low. At night, you can almost hear the thought forming in their heads. Low altitude means flak, height means chaos, and dropping altitude means fighters if they can find you. Then LeMay delivers the final blow. We're stripping the guns. A murmur breaks out now. Heads turn, eyes widen. The B-29 had been designed like a flying fortress, bristling with remote-controlled 50 caliber guns. It was supposed to defend itself, to fight its way in and out. LeMay is throwing that idea into the ocean. Extra guns and ammo are dead weight, he continues. We need fuel. We need bombs. incendiaries. The word hangs unspoken, but everyone knows it. Tokyo isn't built like Berlin, or Hamburg, or London. It's wood and paper. Densely packed neighborhoods, narrow streets, homes that breathe and burn. LeMay isn't interested in factories anymore. He's aiming for cities. Somewhere in the back, a navigator swallows hard. A bombardier clenches his jaw. They understand what this means. This isn't about destroying a target. It's about breaking a nation. The plan is brutal in its simplicity. Fly under the jet stream. Avoid high-altitude winds. Drop thousands of small firebombs that scatter, ignite, and merge. Turn Japan's cities into kindling. No one applauds. LeMay doesn't expect them to. Questions? He asks. There are none. Hours later, engines roar to life across the airfields of the Marianas, Guam, Tinian, Saipan. The night sky fills with the low thunder of superfortresses lifting off one by one, heavy with incendiary clusters. The crews fly without escort. There's no heroic formation, No silver box glittering in the sun, just darkness. You can almost feel how exposed they are as the aircraft settle into low altitude. The altimeters unwind. The sea slides beneath them, black and endless. Radar operators watch blips creep toward the Japanese mainland. In Tokyo, air raid sirens begin to wail again. Most civilians barely react. They've heard this before. High-altitude bombers that do little damage. Bombs that fall wide. Fires quickly extinguished. Life has gone on. Tonight feels no different until it does. At 0:08 on March 10, 1945, the first B-29 crosses the coastline. Searchlights stab upward, struggling to lock on. Anti-aircraft guns bark into the darkness, firing blind. Japanese fighters scramble, engines screaming as they claw for altitude, but the bombers are already below them. The first incendiaries fall, small, spinning, almost harmless looking. Then they hit. Magnesium ignites on contact, burning white-hot. Roofs erupt. Tatami mats catch instantly. Paper walls vanish in flame. Within minutes, hundreds of individual fires merge into something alive. A firestorm? Wind rushes inward, feeding the blaze. Oxygen is ripped from the streets. People trying to flee are knocked to the ground by the force of it. Others collapse where they stand, lungs burning, skin blistering. From above, the crew stare in disbelief. This isn't bombing, it's a transformation. The city becomes a single, churning mass of flame stretching to the horizon. Smoke climbs thousands of feet, rocking the aircraft as they pass through it. Some pilots gag inside their oxygen masks, eyes watering at the stench of burning wood. And something worse. You can almost hear the silence in the cockpits. No one cheers. No one speaks. They drop their loads and turn for home, flying through rising heat that rattles the Superfortress like turbulence. Below them, Tokyo is dying. By morning, over 100,000 people are dead. 16 square miles reduced to ash. Rivers clogged with bodies. Streets melted into indistinguishable ruin. Fire crews overwhelmed, suffocated, gone. Japanese leadership is stunned. This was not what they expected from the B-29. This was not a nuisance raid, not symbolic, not survivable. Reports flood in from police stations, hospitals, military districts. Communications break down. Survivors wander the ruins in shock, clutching burned belongings that mean nothing now. For the first time, Japan's cities are no longer safe. And the B-29, once mocked, doubted, cursed, has found its terrible purpose. LeMay reads the after-action reports without expression. Losses are acceptable. Results are undeniable. The experiment is over. The age of high-altitude precision bombing against Japan dies that night. What replaces it will reshape the war and force Japan toward a realization it can no longer escape. Because Tokyo was only the beginning. April 1945. Imperial Palace District, Tokyo. Ash still drifts through the air like gray snow. It settles on burned rooftops, on blackened trees, on the shoulders of men who no longer bother brushing it away. Tokyo is quieter than it has ever been. Inside a reinforced room near the palace grounds, senior members of Japan's leadership sit in rigid silence. Each one burned. The reports are no longer vague. They are precise. Terrifyingly precise. Numbers of homes destroyed. Numbers of civilians dead. Numbers of factories rendered irrelevant because their workers are gone. General Yoshijiro Umezu stares at a summary page, his finger tracing the column downward. He stops near the bottom. His lips tighten. He says nothing. Admiral Toyota Soamu finally breaks the silence. "This is not bombing," he says quietly. "This is extermination." No one contradicts him. For years, Japanese strategy had rested on a belief that the home islands could endure. But this is different. The B-29s come at night now, low, unpredictable. Anti-aircraft guns fire until barrels glow red, but the bombers keep coming. And they come not for factories alone, but for everything. Wooden homes, workshops, storehouses, schools. Japan's cities are not built to fight firestorms. Civil defense units train desperately, digging fire breaks, forming bucket brigades, tearing down buildings by hand in the hope of slowing the spread. In Nagoya, the aircraft industry is gutted not by direct hits on factories, but by the disappearance of the neighborhoods that fed them. In Osaka, warehouses burn for days. In Kobe, entire districts vanish overnight. From the air, B-29 crews begin to recognize cities by their scars. Blackened grids, empty spaces where neighborhoods once stood. Smoke columns rising even before bombs fall from fires that never fully go out. The Superfortress has become a machine of inevitability. Back in the Marianas, maintenance crews work around the clock. Engines are still temperamental. Planes still crash. Men still die. Pilots who once doubted the mission now brief targets with a grim certainty. They no longer ask if the bombing will matter. They know it will. You can hear it in their voices over intercoms. This isn't a duel anymore. It's pressure. Every night, raid strips Japan of something it cannot replace: housing, transportation, morale, control. Even the emperor begins receiving reports directly. Hirohito reads them carefully, alone. Descriptions of mothers jumping into rivers with children in their arms. This is not the war he had envisioned. And yet, surrender is still unspoken, because another belief remains: that no matter how devastating the fire raids are, the Americans will still have to come ashore. An invasion. Operation Downfall. Japan braces for it. Civilians are trained to fight with bamboo spears. But the B-29s keep flying. And then something changes. The bomb loads shift. Not just incendiaries now, but heavier, singular weapons. Crews notice increased security around certain aircraft. In late July, a small number of Superfortresses begin flying missions that don't match the pattern. Solo flights, high altitude, again, reconnaissance runs over untouched cities. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Japanese radar tracks them, but often ignores them. Single bombers aren't worth scrambling fighters anymore. Not after months of massed raids. The leadership senses something, but cannot name it. All they know is this: the B-29, once dismissed as a costly experiment, has not only survived its failures, it has rewritten the rules of the war. Japan's skies are no longer a shield. Cities are no longer a sanctuary. And its future is being shaped not by armies at the shoreline, but by engines humming miles above the earth. Soon, fire will no longer be the worst thing falling from the sky. August 6, 1945, 8:15 a.m., Hiroshima. The sky is almost perfectly clear. A light haze hangs over the city, but nothing unusual enough to stir panic. Streetcars run on schedule. Shopkeepers sweep doorways. School children move through intersections carrying lunch tins and book satchels. High above them, at 31,000 feet, a single B-29 cuts through the blue. Its name is Enola Gay. Colonel Paul Tibbets sits steady at the controls. No tension in his voice, no dramatic flourish. This is not how history announces itself. The aircraft flies straight and level, exactly as planned. You can almost feel how ordinary the moment seems. Below, Japanese radar operators track the bomber briefly, then dismiss it. One aircraft, no formation. No reason to sound the full alarm. Civilians are told to remain calm. They've learned this routine. At 8:15, the bomb bay doors open. The weapon drops away silently. For 43 seconds, nothing happens. Then the world ends. A flash brighter than the sun tears through Hiroshima. Heat races outward faster than sound, igniting skin, wood, paper, everything in an instant. Shadows burn into concrete. Human beings vanish where they stand. The shockwave follows, flattening buildings like toys, ripping roofs into the air, turning streets into walls of debris. Fire erupts everywhere at once, not spreading, appearing. From the Enola Gay, the crew watches the mushroom cloud rise, towering, boiling, alive. No one speaks. They had trained for this, rehearsed it, calculated it. But nothing prepared them for what they are seeing. Down below, Hiroshima ceases to exist as a city. The B-29 circles once, then turns away. In Tokyo, confusion reigns. Communications from Hiroshima go silent. Reports trickle in, fragmented, unbelievable. A single bomb, one aircraft. A city destroyed. Scientists argue, generals demand confirmation. Some refuse to accept it at all. Then, 3 days later, it happens again. August 9th, Nagasaki. Another B-29. Another blinding flash. Another city erased. The firebombing had already pushed Japan to the edge. The atomic bomb shoves it over. Inside the imperial palace, the unthinkable finally happens. The emperor speaks, not to the people yet, but to his ministers. The war must end. There is no battlefield left to contest. No defense against a weapon that can annihilate a city in seconds. No meaning left in sacrifice when annihilation arrives from a single aircraft. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito addresses the nation. His voice is calm, distant, almost unreal. The war, he says, has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. For many listeners, it is the first time they have ever heard him speak. For others, it is the sound of an illusion finally shattering. Weeks later, as American forces land in Japan, they see the aftermath firsthand. Charred ruins stretching to the horizon. Twisted steel, melted glass. Cities reduced to outlines. Survivors moving quietly through the wreckage, eyes hollow, faces unreadable. And everywhere, overhead, on airfields parked along runways, the same aircraft. The B-29 Superfortress. The bomber once mocked as impractical, too expensive, too complex. A technological indulgence. It had ended the war. Not because it was perfect, but because it adapted. The story of the B-29 is not one of instant triumph. It is a story of failure, doubt, and relentless pressure of an aircraft pushed beyond its original purpose until it became something else entirely. A tool of fire, a weapon of terror, a symbol of inevitability. Those who once called it a waste of time were not entirely wrong. At first, but in war, it is not the idea that matters most. It is who is willing to change it when reality demands blood. And when Japan's cities burned, the B-29 proved that the future of warfare had already arrived.